All right, so Joe Manchin, the corporate ghoul from West Virginia, is throwing yet another curveball into the negotiations surrounding this $3.5 trillion or no longer $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation package that he is still trying to tank for absolutely no purpose other than serving the interests of his own personal financial situation and the interests of the corporations and billionaires who funnel infinite sums of money into his campaign, as reportedly Joe Manchin has been threatening to leave the Democratic Party. Hear from Mother Jones and David Corn. Scoop: Manchin tells associates he is considering leaving the Democratic Party and he has an exit plan. Okay, so now before we get into the actual details of this supposed plan, okay, Joe Manchin did come out and he publicly said this is bullshit. Okay, he said it with a capital B. He said this is capital B, a bullshit story. Okay, so can we trust Joe Manchin at his word that this is a bullshit story? No. Okay, we can't really trust Joe Manchin at his word on jack shit. Okay, this is an entirely corrupted entity who has not been coming to the table in good faith throughout the entirety of this negotiation process. And so we can't really trust him at his word. But either way, I think this is an interesting conversation to say, like, if this hypothetically was a true story, which again, we don't really know 100% either way, but if it is a hypothetically true story, then what should Democrats do to respond to a situation like this? So I wanted to read you some of the details and give you my take on it. So in recent days, Senator Joe Manchin has told associates that he is considering leaving the Democratic Party if President Joe Biden and Democrats on Capitol Hill do not agree to his demand to cut the size of the social infrastructure bill from $3.5 trillion to $1.75 trillion, according to people who have heard Manchin discuss this. And Manchin has said that if this were to happen, he would declare himself, quote, an American independent, and he has devised a detailed exit strategy for his departure. So already, listen, whether or not the story is true or not, 3.5 trillion to 1.75 trillion, this is literally what we saw the other day. I covered an entire story on this, describing how Joe Manchin is basically getting Biden to completely tank his whole agenda, right? We started at 6 trillion, whittled it down to 3.5 trillion. Now we're, according to what Biden is estimating now, all the way down at 1.75 trillion. So whether or not the scoop is actually true, it seems like, whether or not this was actually what took place behind the scenes that motivated Biden to do this, either way, Biden is falling in line with exactly what Joe Manchin has been demanding. And so they continue here saying that Manchin has been in the center of a wild rush of negotiations with his fellow Democrats and the White House over a possible compromise regarding Biden's ambitious Build Back Better package and Manchin's opposition to key provisions including Medicare and Medicaid expansions, an expanded child tax credit, and measures to address climate change, all desperately needed and overwhelmingly popular policies that he is opposing. And he has been an obstacle that Democrats have yet to overcome. And as these talks have proceeded, Manchin has discussed bolting from the Democratic Party, perhaps to place pressure on Biden and Democrats in these negotiations. And he told associates that he has a two-step plan for exiting the party. First, he would send a letter to Chuck Schumer, very ominous, the top Senate Democrat, removing himself from the Democratic leadership of the Senate. He is the vice chair of the Senate Democratic's Policy and Communications Committee, and Manchin hopes that it would send a signal, and he would then wait and see if that move had any impact on the negotiations. And after about a week, he said he would change his voter registration from Democrat to independent. And importantly, it is unclear whether this scenario, Manchin would end up caucusing with Democrats or Republicans, which either way would pretty much, in the 50-50 split in the Senate that we currently have, would basically determine who gets a majority control over the Senate. Would it be Mitch McConnell or would it continue to be Chuck Schumer? So that would be pretty impactful, obviously. But whether or not this is a legitimate threat or not, Democrats should not be feeling threatened by this, okay? There's functionally no difference between having Joe Manchin be a caucusing member of the Democratic Party and not. I mean, if this is a guy who is functionally the same as a Mitt Romney style Republican, right, then what is the point? I mean, he's not really adding anything to your party. And honestly, it might even be better for the Democratic Party to shave off people like Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, who are making the party look like absolute dog shit right now with their blatant and open corruption that the entire country is getting to witness right now. So honestly, I think this would be a good thing. And if I was the leader of the Democratic Party, or like I was in the position of Chuck Schumer or Joe Biden in this situation, I would welcome this, okay? Because again, there's no functional difference between Manchin acting like a Republican and pushing for a Republican style agenda as a member of the Democratic Party, and then him doing that exact same thing as an independent or as a Republican. They're all functionally the same when it comes to the policy outcomes that are going to be able to be passed if he is the deciding vote. And so the actual solution would be boot him from the fucking party and then run on an aggressively leftist agenda, the one that, like, say, Bernie Sanders was proposing that was overwhelmingly popular among the American people, and then make your party the party of Bernie Sanders and not the party of Joe Manchin. I mean, we know the corruption that has been out in the open. This is actually a recent story that came out. Billionaire investor Nelson Peltz says that he talks, that's quite a name there, Nelson Peltz says that he talks every week to Senator Joe Manchin, who is pushing to cut Biden agenda. So, I mean, he's literally talking to billionaires. He's literally having phone conversations weekly with ExxonMobil lobbyists and billionaires who are telling him to hold the line. And that's exactly what he has been doing. And it seems like he is winning out in this entire negotiation process because Joe Biden has absolutely no balls and is not willing to be like an FDR or an LBJ and actually go to the mat and fight Joe Manchin on any of this, largely because he kind of agrees with Joe Manchin on a lot of this. And so really, additionally, obviously, we had this corruption as well, right? Joe Manchin's dirty empire makes upwards of $500,000 a year from his coal company that his son is running, okay? And in addition to that, he is the single largest recipient of fossil fuel money in the entire Democratic Party. So it's like, really, this, whether or not the story is true, again, the main piece of this is like, what do Democrats actually want to be? Do you want to be the party of Bernie Sanders and actually have a chance at distinguishing yourself from the Republican establishment and actually giving the American people an alternative vision that they can believe in and they can rally behind the Democratic Party to push us into that future, right? Or do you want to be the party that allows one guy who is a millionaire coal baron, who is probably one of the most, if not the single most corrupt members in the Democratic Party or even in the entire country? Do you want him to be the leader of that party and allow him to set your agenda? I mean, it's a pretty clear and obvious answer as to which one of those would be the best sustainable option for the Democratic Party, the best political option for the Democratic Party, and the best for the American people as well. I mean, it's a pretty clear-cut answer here. I mean, fuck Joe Manchin, kick him out the party if this is actually a threat that he was leveling behind the scenes. But again, it doesn't really seem like it matters, because whether or not this was a legitimate threat that he was posing to Biden and Chuck Schumer behind the scenes, it seems like he's gotten his way. And that is because the Democratic establishment is more in line with Joe Manchin than they are with Bernie Sanders. And if the Democratic Party wants any sustainable future, right, and they don't want to get clobbered by Republicans in 2022 or 2024, which it's really on the table whether or not they care about winning either of those elections. But this is really just a question of what do you want the Democratic Party to represent going into the future. And if Democrats cannot choose between Joe Manchin and Bernie Sanders, then there is no hope for the Democratic Party.